Hey, what's going on guys? It's Tom Mason here, and today you're joining me out on location because I'm going to be talking to you about how to scout out somewhere new to get some wildlife pictures. So let's crack on and find a few places. So I've come down to the first viewpoint, and you'll notice that I actually don't have a lot of gear with me today. I've actually got the single most important bit of kit I need, and that is a decent pair of binoculars. Now, when you're scouting out a location for the first time, bringing all your camera gear, to be honest, isn't really worth it, because you're not going to understand where is best to be and position yourself to get the best shots, and not only that, you won't know what gear you specifically need to get the images you're after. So the first thing I do with any project when I'm starting out is to go down, scout it out with a pair of binoculars, so I can work out where in the landscape I'm going to position myself and what I'm going to need to actually get the shots I want. But today I've actually also got the awesome new Swarovski CLs. These are the new companions, and I'm testing these out at the moment because I think I'm going to add them to my bag. But you know, having a really decent pair of binoculars is key for not only finding locations, but also picking out your wildlife when you are coming down to shoot in the future. But right, let's see what we can find. So quickly casting an eye around the reserve, I've already got a pretty good list of common species and waterfowl. You know, fantastic, because it means that there's a lot of stuff here that I can crack on and photograph. Now, what I'm trying to do is ascertain the locations where the birds are most predominantly found. And here right in front of me is actually a really good spot because it's where people feed the ducks a lot of the time. So the birds are really confident around people here. That's really quite nice. But for me, photographically, it's not that great because, you know, there's not really enough background for it. It's going to be a good opportunity to get some really clean portraits, especially if I can get low in the water. But maybe the edge along the reeds might produce some better photographic opportunities. Now, as well as locating your wildlife, your binoculars are fantastic for another reason, and that is actually ascertaining how you're going to go about shooting your pictures in the first place. Now, with water birds, waders, anything like that, I need to be really low to the ground and low to the water in order to get those flattering pictures. So finding ways to get in is really key and something that I go ahead and scout out. Now, using my binoculars, I've looked across and I've noticed that there's a really nice area of flat scrape. Now, that flat scrape is going to be perfect for positioning something like a low angled hide, be it a bivy bag with a cover over me or a low angled tent that's going to give me a bit more cover from the rain. Also, they're brilliant because I can get really low to the floor and to get those flattering shots of waders coming in the shallows, and onto the scrape is where they prefer to feed. But for the ducks and the grebes and anything that, you know, likes the deeper water, as it were, I'm going to need a bit of a different approach, and that's where my waders come into use. Now, when you're using waders out in the field, you've got to be pretty careful because, you know, as much as, you know, they're all good fun, you get to get in the water, you're nice and freed up, you don't get wet. They can be a little bit dangerous because, you know, you go in too deep, they fill up, they make it very difficult to swim, and they can get you into a bit of trouble. So always scout out the actual footing you're going to be using before you go in and use them. Now here I can see that actually in the water it's all small pebbles and kind of like nice shingle below the water. That's really good because it's going to give me solid footing for working in the water here. And that means that not only can I find a place where I can walk in and stand quite comfortably, but also in the shallower areas around here I might actually even be able to just sit on the floor. That's going to make it really comfortable for a long stakeout. Now, with waders, of course, getting you into the water, they make it far easier to approach wildlife because you're just sunken into the water. It makes you far less of a threatening shape, and that means they're going to get used to you quite quickly so you can get in and get some images. So when I come back over the next couple of months, I think my waders are going to be a key thing for getting in and shooting the birds here. And with the nice backgrounds of the reeds behind, I think it might make some really nice pictures. Right, so with this area scouted and a couple of good ideas in the bag of what I might shoot down here, let's move up to the other side of the reserve and see what we can find, because I've got a good bit of inside knowledge about another species that might make a cracking little local project. Right, so I've just dropped in off the road that goes over a small bridge where the water flows out from the lake out to the sea, and this small river is a perfect place for getting some shots because I've pretty much come off. I've already seen a little egret walking up in the shallows, and then a kingfisher pretty much just pinged up the river there, and that's great because, you know, in no time whatsoever I've already found two other subjects that might work really nicely. And spotting the little egret, I know that the water is really quite shallow here, And that's great because it means I can work from the water to get myself in position, and also easily position maybe a stick or something like that for the kingfisher to sit on. So right, let's go a bit closer. I absolutely love oyster catchers. Right, that's the end of my flask. I've taken well too much of a long-term coffee break because I got distracted watching oyster catchers, some black-tailed gobwits and some just wonderful birds and bullfinches over there, really loads of stuff. But what I have noticed on this river is there is a nice couple of mammal tracks that lead down to the side here. Don't know what they are just yet because I need to get a closer look, but you know, the way they are, they might be foxes, badgers, anything like that moving through the undergrowth. So I'm going to get over there after I finish this and see if I can find a place to stick a Bushnell camera trap in, because it will just give me a much better long-term indication of how regularly stuff is used in the track and if it's a good chance to maybe stick a remote camera or camera trap in the future. But right, I'm going to enjoy this and then we'll head over there. Oh. So the last bit I'm exploring before I head home is the wet woodland on the opposite side of the river. So this is where the kingfisher was, and also where the kind of little mammal tracks are behind me. Now this is already looking far better in terms of a location to work with, because I've got more cover from the trees that are over me, that's going to conceal me better for getting close to that kingfisher, but also just because I have these trees right here, I'm actually going to be able to build a really good hide in this corner, maybe working with a bag hide or something like that. And if I get down nice and low, I'm actually going to have a really nice clean background over to the other side of the river, that's essential for this sort of photography. You know, with a 300mm, maybe with a 1.4 teleconverter, it's going to be plenty of reach for working here. I can actually even put the stick directly into the other bank that will make it really easy to work. It's really nice. And now, you know, this is going to be probably the next project I start to work with the kingfishers here. You know, I'll scout it out a bit more, see if they're here regularly, but I've got a bit of local knowledge that this is a spot they use quite a bit, so that should be really handy. But now I just want to look down this track, because I think this could be another location, possibly fox or badger maybe. You can see the track that moves through here, and actually on this tree here I might position a Bushnell and see if we've got anything moving in and out, because there's a lot of flattened areas on the edge that might be a good indication that there's quite a lot here. So if I use this spot to put a Bushnell in on this tree right here, that'll give me quite a good indication as if there's anything moving along this section. And you know, with all wildlife photography, having that long-term monitoring, that long-term bit of knowledge about when stuff's moving through and if there's some good stuff about, will be really helpful for me working on local projects. So let's stick this camera up in this tree. Now, in order to get the best out of my Bushnell, I need to make sure that the angle it's going to look at is going to give me the best options for my subjects. Now, I'm pretty much thinking this is going to be a fox or something like that. Now, I've got a track that runs off to my right and also another one that runs, kind of bends behind me. So the area that I want to focus on is kind of this patch on my right hand side. Now, these trees are going to be great to position myself, and what I've got is a couple of reusable cable ties. I use the ones that you can just actually unclip and reuse, because you know, it's just so much better for the environment. I hate the idea of just constantly wasting plastic, so these just stick through. And often Bushnells come with these straps that you can use. The problem is they're so cumbersome and you have to like tie them around 100 times. I find that cable ties are so much easier to use in the field, and you can carry them so easily. So I've got these, and all I'm going to do is strap it to this tree and angle it just looking in this way to see if we can get some shots. Now, I have all my Bushnells numbered and labelled with my information, but often if I'm in a more kind of urban area where I'm a bit worried about them, I will fully lock them down. But here, I think it'll be alright, so I'm just pretty much going to cable it in, make sure it's not too visible from kind of the road or anything like that, and then I'm going to set it up, leave it, and we'll come back and check it in probably a couple of weeks and see if there's anything on it. Now, I've got it set on video 30-second clip, just because it gives me a lot more to kind of watch. Sometimes You know, I know the animals will only pass through for a couple of seconds, but being able to get a 30-second clip to just see if they're going to move through and come back, anything like that, is quite handy. Got a 32 gig card in there, so it's going to run for a lot of time, and I've got it on 720p HD video. That should be give me enough of an indication if this location's going to be any good. So right, let's go ahead and stick that on. Right, so that's been a pretty successful morning scouting out a new location with my binoculars. Found a good set of subjects to work with, as well as, you know, some different ways to approach them. I've got the waterfowl out on the lake that's going to be great, using my waders to get close to those. The bit of scrape to actually photograph waders, oyster catchers, all of that stuff should be really nice. And then the kingfisher up on the river would be really great if I can nail that down and find a perch and put all that stuff in to again work on another local project. But with a Bushnell set up to record and see if we've got any mammal activity, any nocturnal activity, I'm going to head back home, grab some brunch and crack on with some editing. But if you've got any questions about scouting out a local nature reserve, and any questions about other subjects that you'd like me to cover and photograph, you know, whatever it is, drop it in the comments below. More than happy to get back to you. Thank you very much for watching, and join me again soon. I've got some other videos coming up with the review of these, plus some about composition in wildlife photography. So join me again soon, and yeah, crack on shooting.